It's time for Waking Up with Wesley. Today's forecast and weather-wide discussion with WLOX First Alert Weather Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams.
Waking Up with Wesley is sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for waking up with Wesley. I'm Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. So today we continue to track the tropics. There's that tropical weather in the Gulf, which is continuing to move westward, and we're going to take a look at how that may impact our weather here in South Mississippi this week. And we're already under a flood watch going into effect today and continuing through Friday night with that flood watch. We're going to break down that day-by-day risk of flooding for our area with the threat of this tropical weather. So that's what we're going to start off with. We're also going to take a look, we covered this a little bit yesterday about why they call it an invest, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. And then we'll take a look at what I'm seeing this morning on satellite. We did a weather app push with that. If you have our First Alert weather app, you already heard a little bit about that as we briefly touched on what I'm seeing on this morning's satellite. And like I said, we'll take a look at that too in this video in the order that I mentioned it. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to pick things up where we were talking about the risk of flooding and break that down for you day by day. So as that loads, here we go. So today, Wednesday and Wednesday night, we are looking at a level 1 out of 4 risk of flooding. Now this is something that the Weather Prediction Center issues every day across the whole country. They tell you who has a risk of seeing flooding rain and how high that risk. The higher the level means the higher the probability of you seeing flooding somewhere in your neighborhood. And so that level 1 is a very low probability, but it's not zero. And something that we'll monitor for Wednesday and this entire Gulf Coast region, basically Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and much of Florida's Gulf Coast under that level 1 risk of flooding rain. I will say a lot of times when you get the level 1, there's plenty of people who get absolutely no flooding at all. But as you go higher and higher, you're more likely to see evidence of flooding. It's pretty much, from what I've experienced, a guarantee. Once you hit level 3, there's basically a guarantee that you're going to wind up seeing somebody needing to be rescued from high waters. Once you hit level 4, it's basically a guarantee that you're probably going to see many people needing to be rescued from high floodwaters. So just keep that in mind, that once you get up to that 3 and 4, it's a serious deal as far as what I've seen historically in our region. So today and tonight, you got a 1. What about for tomorrow and tomorrow night? Well, it looks like there's an increase. We're increasing to a level 2 risk of flooding in South Mississippi for Thursday and Thursday night. So expect whatever you see today and tonight to perhaps be a little worse as we head into tomorrow and tomorrow night, rain-wise. And then take a look at Friday and Friday night. This is actually the worst time frame of this entire situation with this tropical weather. Fortunately, in South Mississippi, we don't have the bullseye, but there does appear to be some area just to our west in Louisiana, near Lake Charles, where there's a level 3 out of 4 risk of flooding rain. And like I say, once you get to that 3 or 4 on this scale, it's a pretty serious thing. The probability is much higher for there to be life-threatening flooding in those areas. So if you have travel plans through Louisiana on Friday and Friday night, you definitely want to use extreme caution, as there will be pretty high probability of flooding rain in places near Lake Charles and Lafayette. Meanwhile, on the Mississippi coast, we're steady state. We keep the same risk level from Thursday to Friday, a 2, which is, something to monitor, but not extremely serious, I would say. Finally, Saturday night, we fortunately see a decrease. So this is good news for your weekend plans. If you're concerned about your weekend being a washout in South Mississippi, right now things are looking good. I don't want to overstate that. So I think it's safe to use the word good. I won't say they're looking amazing, but they're looking all right to good might be a good way to describe that. As you can see, there is still a risk of flooding rain in South Mississippi on Saturday and Saturday night, but that risk level decreases from 2 down to 1. And here's the best part, the whole weekend, seeing that continuing trend of decreasing flood risk. So by the time we go to Sunday, there's no part of Louisiana and Mississippi that has that risk of flooding rain that we can see on this map. So good news there that eventually we will see some improvement, but before that we do have to get through that higher probability, that level 2, especially into Thursday and Friday. So let's take a look. I mentioned earlier about, describing, they call these things Invest, right? That's what we are tracking in the Gulf today. Invest 93L. And I talk about this pretty often about why they call it that, the nomenclature, why they name these things that way. First of all, in order to run those spaghetti models, all the computer models, that's why they call this an invest. Once they declare something an invest, that is what gets all those computer models going and allows us to get the computer model view of these tropical disturbances. Without them using the invest naming, we actually wouldn't be able to see those types of spaghetti lines in computer models and such. So there you can see that you have that Invest 93L there. And what I was going to do is switch over. A few years back, this seems like it's more recently than it actually is. 2019, does that sound long ago to you? Not to me. But apparently, according to the calendar, that is 6 years ago, I guess. And so I wrote this article on our website, WLOX.com. What is an invest? Tropical terms explained. And I easily found this by just Googling invest, or actually I Googled what is an invest WLOX, and I was able to click the top result. And so this goes into detail explaining it. But the bottom line here is that the term tropical wave, the term invest, all these different terms are used to describe an area that has not been named yet. And these areas can usually cause heavy rain showers, but they usually don't have the ability to strengthen rapidly. And once you have these little invest areas and they get these three things, a closed circulation, a well-defined center, and organized thunderstorms going around that center, once you get those three things, then it is a tropical system. And those can either start at depression level if they have winds of less than 39 miles an hour, or if they have winds of greater than 39 miles an hour, then they'll start at tropical storm level. And once you get winds of 74 or higher, then it's a hurricane. And like I said, the terminology invest, I go into the details of all of that in here. If you are interested in that, you can search for that article on our website. But the terminology is generally that it's called invest because it's an area that they are investigating for tropical activity, for tropical development. And they use a number between 90 and 99. This one's 93 because we already saw 90, we already saw 91, we already saw 92 so far this year. So this is the fourth invest of 2025, it is 93. And those numbers will keep going. If we see a new disturbance next week, they'll call that 94. And so on and so forth until you hit 99. And then what happens? Once you hit 99, what's next? Well, they just go right back to 90 and they start that over again. And it has an L on the end of it because this is in the Atlantic basin, L for Atlantic. So that's just to tell you where you see the invest on the map. Anywhere in the Gulf, Caribbean, and Atlantic, those are all bodies of water underneath the Atlantic basin. Now, on the other side of the continent, on the West Coast, if there's an invest on the west side of Mexico, it does not get an L behind its name. I believe it gets an E behind its name for East Pacific. And then if they form way out in the Pacific, like maybe near or west of Hawaii, then they actually get a P on the end of their name for just like Pacific. So hopefully that helps you to understand the nomenclature, the naming behind systems, or those weather disturbances rather. So let's take a look at the first daylight images. I've been watching this closely on satellite this morning. I know that was kind of an overview with the satellite and radar there, but we've got an even finer view of the satellite right here, which helps me to see some of the finer images. And I'm going to blow this up big on the screen so you can see a bigger picture of this. So the National Hurricane Center believes that the circulation, the broad circulation of 93L, is located somewhere in this general region here. It's very difficult to see from me on satellite, but maybe there is just the subtlest of circulations, of swirls there in the visible satellite imagery this morning. So that's where the National Hurricane Center believes that 93L is located on this morning in that area. But here's the thing. That's not where the thunderstorms are, right? You can see where the thunderstorms are located. They're way out here. They are displaced well to the west of where the National Hurricane Center believes the circulation of 93L is located. Now, in this configuration, this is a very disorganized disturbance because where it is located, none of its thunderstorms are located. But sometimes what happens with this is when you have these thunderstorms sitting over warm water, there is a low pressure that can form right within them. And if something like that happens, then that might actually draw this circulation beneath these thunderstorms. Or we might just get a brand new circulation to form right underneath this cluster of enhanced thunderstorm activity. You can even see it. It almost looks like a pot of water boiling. Look at how this bubbles. Blah, 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 blah. You see how it kind of bubbles up there? These are called convective towers. That's where you have some pretty rapid vertical development, vertical growth in the clouds there, indicating some pretty enhanced thunderstorms. And so you see these convective towers bubbling up here, but especially bubbly right about here. So you definitely have some intensifying thunderstorm activity here. And like I said, if this continues to sit over warm waters, which, by the way, water temperatures are at 90 in that area, I suspect we are going to see a shift here. I suspect we're going to see a shift from where the National Hurricane Center has the fix of 93L. I think we're going to see that shifting to down here, closer to this cluster of thunderstorms. But it all depends because there's actually competing factors at play. I talk about the sea surface temperatures, right? So these numbers that you see here, when we go back, this 90, this 88, these are all sea surface temperatures. So it only tells you the temperature at the water's surface, but obviously water is deep. What about the temperature below the surface? And I got to tell you, there's actually some cooler water beneath these sea surface temperatures. And if we have this, system trying to form with thunderstorms sloshing around the water, causing wave action in the northern Gulf, that wave action displaces the water from the surface. And cooler water wells up from the depths to replace that displaced surface water. So this thing might sit over those warm waters and eventually slosh them around so much that some of those sea surface temperatures might actually come down a little bit just from the wind and wave action alone, let alone that there's also thunderstorms that are pouring down cooling rain on top of the water surface. So you have multiple features, multiple factors at play that might kind of fight off some of that warm bathwater effect. And we're going to see exactly the results of that clash of factors. We'll see the results of it, whether this actually gets better organized or not. We take a look at the winds. This helps us to find where that center of circulation might be. And the reason I'm seeing why the National Hurricane Center thinks that the circulation might be about here, we've got a north wind. A north wind reported on the coast east of Panama City, north wind reported there as well. So if you have winds coming in from the north, that tells you that the center, remember this stuff is counterclockwise, so wherever there's a north wind, that means the center is east of that. Wherever there's a west wind, like we have up here, that means the center is south of that. Wherever we have a wind coming in from the south, it means the center is west of that. So that's why somewhere in this general area is where the broad circulation of 93L is being analyzed based on those wind reports and based on the satellite imagery showing that very subtle swirl we saw in the clouds a few moments ago on those daylight images. I know I can get really carried away when I do the tropical analysis, but this is what I'm passionate about, analyzing tropical weather. I usually have a little stop clock to watch how long I'm going in these updates, and I actually forgot to set it up today, so I have no idea how long this video update has been going on for, but I'm betting it's been more than 10 minutes. But I just wanted to give you a feel for what I'm looking at so you can see what I'm watching in the First Alert Weather Center this morning. And this is going to play a key role in shifting some of the models, I think, because if we can get this center to, instead of being near land over Florida, to instead shift to being away from land, closer to this cluster of storms. If that shift actually happens, all of our models are also going to begin flip-flopping and shifting a little bit farther to the south. These are those spaghetti models that we talk about. And I think I'm already seeing some of them trending a little bit more to the south based on what was happening earlier this morning. Look, this disturbance is poorly organized. So I'm not expecting like perfect results from these computer models because we know that they typically struggle when it comes to poorly organized disturbances like this or systems that have not really formed yet. But if we can see this shift, this is where look at where all the orange lines start, right? All the orange lines start out there. You don't see many of the orange lines starting out here. But if that shift happens, if we see the center moving closer to that cluster, then all of the orange lines are going to have to start over water. And I think if they do that, they're going to find a stronger storm. A lot of times when a storm gets away from land, it's got more elbow room, less friction, and more warm water to take advantage of, more moisture. So that might help the system to become a little bit stronger. For now, though, it is disorganized as it's moving west through the Gulf. But there's a chance, medium chance, 40% chance for it to become a depression or storm. We'll see if that chance trends up or down. So far, it's just been a steady state. And since we have competing features, it's difficult for me to tell with any accuracy whether that trend will change for now. But the focus is going to be on the heavy flooding rain threat. This is the information I have this morning. It shows 1 to 3 inches of rain expected for all of South Mississippi through Friday's end. And some places could pick up even higher totals, maybe some 3-inch plus totals, maybe in the 3 to 6 inch range. That is the reason why a flood watch is going into effect for the entire Mississippi coast heading into Wednesday PM, and this goes through all day Thursday, all day Friday into Friday night. And then maybe we see a decrease over the weekend. That's what some of our computer models continue to indicate as we walk through this pretty quickly, noticing that Wednesday AM, you don't really have much high chance for rain. But by the time we go to Wednesday PM, looking at some scattered showers and thunderstorms in parts of South Mississippi later this afternoon and this evening. Then take a look at Thursday, on and off rain bands as that tropical weather moves farther west. And Friday, still seeing on and off rain bands, and some of our modeling indicating some of those rain bands on Friday might be oriented north-south, which could cause a training effect, which could lead to maybe some better likelihood of flooding. Now notice as we get past Friday, you don't have that continuous big stretch of red. So maybe we'll see more breaks in the rain over the weekend on Saturday, Sunday, and into next week. If we see more breaks in the rain, then that will be a thing that helps us to see the flooding risk reduce at that point in time. So the last thing we'll do here is go over the futurecast before we go, and then we'll take a look at the 7-day. And the good news is that the futurecast still seems to be in line with our general thinking today, seeing many rain-free hours in the first part of the day. I want to rewind this and skip the morning. Let me roll this back. but it starts off in the first part of the day, there it is, with little to no rain, and then we get to Wednesday PM and we begin to see those scattered showers and thunderstorms popping up in the area, and so those might be passing through with some downpours at times Wednesday PM. So as we go to Thursday, where is this tropical weather? Where's the center? The model thinks the center is down here near the Louisiana coast. And the deeper we go into Thursday, the more west that center generally moves. So by the time we get to Thursday PM, we're seeing some of those rain bands rolling across our area. They appear to be west-east oriented, and they are rolling from east to west. That could possibly be some training there for some areas in South Mississippi. Take a look at Friday. We see the modeling, which again might not be completely accurate because it's modeling on a poorly organized disturbance. So take it with a grain of salt. Yesterday it showed a hurricane, right? Today it's not even showing that, but it shows that center over Louisiana. This puts Mississippi on the east side, and the orientation of these rain bands are really south-north. So we have south-north oriented rain bands moving from south to north. That's an easy setup for training, which we say training. What does that mean? It's like a train going over the tracks. It goes over the same tracks over and over. So you have a shower here, which will go over Long Beach, and then another shower pops up later and again goes up over Long Beach, and you have another one popping up and it goes over. I'm sorry to single y'all out in Long Beach just as an example, but just know there's going to be some locations where the thunderstorms pop up and they roll over and over and over off the Gulf, and that's what can easily get to a flooding situation. Even though the center, the core of the tropical weather might be west of us hitting Lake Charles and Lafayette, we could still see some training rain bands possibly setting up where we are on the eastern side of that circulation. So putting it all together in a 7-day forecast, we have that flood watch from Wednesday PM through Friday night, and then the flood watch comes to an end this weekend. So that is probably going to help to signal that we will see a decrease in the flood risk for Saturday and Sunday. Does that mean Saturday and Sunday are going to be completely rain-free? I don't think so. But I do think that we will see more breaks in the rain, and that means less of a potential for flooding as it decreases from Saturday into Sunday. And then it looks like we're kind of returning to your typical summertime vibe heading into early next week. Daily pop-up storms, highs in the lower 90s next Monday, Tuesday. Well, I'm pretty sure I've probably run out of time for my update today, but thank you all so much for watching this edition of Waking Up with Wesley. I've been Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. I hope that you have a good Wednesday and stay safe from the risk of flooding. We'll catch you again next time. Take care.
Waking Up with Wesley has been sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.